Hi, my name is Sherry, and I'm a Christian and a chronic narcissistic abuse survivor. I'm making this video because, well, God just won't leave me alone about it. Um, it's not for me. I'm not trying to sell a product. There's no link at the end of this rainbow. I really feel in my spirit that there are people out there like me who are trapped in relationships and marriages to people that they weren't meant to be with at this time, at least. There's freedom from this. And I feel like because of what God has brought me through, I have a desire and an obligation to share my experiences in hopes that it will help someone else. Now, every situation is different and every person is different. And my narcissist may not look like your narcissist, but if you can relate to something here, if something here helps you, then that's what matters to me. I'm just going to start at the beginning, the part that I'm a Christian. Being a Christian, following Christ, is perhaps one of those things that is kind of a double-edged sword, because on one hand, you have Jesus and you know all about love and forgiveness and commitment and all of those things. But that can also cause problems because religion gets in the way. And the people in church, not the church, not the body of Christ, but the people in the church buildings, the leaders, sometimes work against you as a Christian when it comes to being free from abuse. They think you need to save your marriage no matter what. That's not necessarily true. What God has joined together, let no one put asunder. But the fact is that it isn't always God that joins us together. Every match wasn't made in heaven, and mine definitely wasn't. I was targeted, and I didn't recognize that at the time, because this person that came into my life appeared to be one thing and was something else. But you see, the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He stole years of my life. It was physically damaging me. I was sick and anxious all the time. And I very nearly was destroyed. I believe I was passively suicidal. Like, I wasn't actually going to take my life, but I wasn't going to take any steps to stop it from happening. And slowly I was dying in the darkness and loneliness and the fear and the pain and the sickness and all of the stuff that comes with narcissistic abuse. So the thing about a narcissist also is that, like the devil, they can appear as an angel of light, and often to the outside world, that's what they are. They might think that they are really nice people, kind, gentle, tender, and they will portray themselves as Christians. They'll say things like, we're so blessed, we have this wonderful family, I have this great career, God has really blessed me. But the fact is, God blesses everyone. It rains on the just and the unjust, and a narcissist is no different. The fact is that the fruits aren't there, and that's how you know, especially the fruit of love. Now, they can fake love, they can say they love you, but the thing is, there's always an agenda. There's always something attached there. I love you if you do this for me, if you give me what I want, if you show me the side of you that I want to see, if you are the person I want you to be. But they don't even know you. They don't even really know who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what you're passionate about, what really makes you you is just a mystery to them. A narcissist, and I think the term might be overused, but a true narcissist is all about themselves, just as in the myth, Narcissus got caught up in looking at his own reflection and eventually drowned. A true narcissistic personality is always all about themselves and all about appearances, how everything looks compared to how it is, and that can be vastly different. And people, they don't know. They think you're doing well. And, in my case, I was part of the problem because I covered for him. I thought I was protecting my family. I thought I was protecting our reputation. I had all these reasons for doing what I did. And I thought staying with him was the right thing as a Christian, because they tell you, it's a covenant when you get married and you shouldn't break it. Those are vows that you took, sacred vows before God. And they tell you God wants you to be holy and not happy, and that your character can win that person over. And you hear all of these legalistic arguments, and they can really keep you trapped. Because the truth is, just because you took the vows doesn't mean you should have. Just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Well, we take marriage vows. Why do we do that? I don't know. I think if I really was in love with someone and wanted to spend the rest of my life with them, that I would just want to speak from my heart now and not necessarily use traditional marriage vows. Just say what I want to say to that person. Because I feel like it's committing to something without realizing what you're committing to, in the case with the narcissist in particular. You don't know what you did. You don't know what you signed up for. You don't know who that person is. And when you find out, it isn't pretty. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, they take everything you got. You work like a dog. You get no credit for anything. They'll give you a little bit, you're so pretty, I love you so much, and then they'll just take it all back, and their actions and their words, they never match, and then they say some of the most horrible things and do some of the most horrible things, and they bait you until you get to a point where you can't handle it anymore, and you react, and when you react, well, you're the crazy one. You're the abusive one. And the truth is, when I was with this narcissist, I was with him for 19 plus years, I hated the person I became. I was yelling and cussing and telling him I hated him, and it was in that moment, it wasn't all the time, but in that moment, that's how I felt, because he wouldn't stop. He kept coming after me, and he wouldn't stop until I just couldn't take it anymore. And then when that happened, he would turn it all around on me. Gaslighting is a big thing. I know most people are familiar with the concept, but generally speaking, if a narcissist is accusing you of doing something, it's what they're doing. So, perfect example, he used to accuse me of keeping him away from his friends. And I believed that. But it wasn't really true. The truth was, he didn't want to see his friends, and so he set me up. They are artistically manipulative. And he was able to say to me, I want to go out with my friends, but he really didn't. And he said in such a way, and he made it happen so that I would think that bad things were going to happen if he went with them, and I would ask him please not to go, and then he would say, well, I won't go for you. The ultimate sacrifice. But then a few days later, after I'd had time to think about it and pray about it, I was like, I'm being stupid, I'm being selfish, that's not reasonable to keep him away from his friends. And so I told him he could go, and then he said no. And in that moment, I think I realized he didn't want to see them. He didn't want to talk to them. He was using me as an excuse, and he did that kind of thing a lot. If he ever did do anything nice for me, there was always an agenda. There was always an ulterior motive. Coming to me and he cleaned. And I should know by a certain point what that means, but he cleaned, and I was like, oh, that's so nice. He did that for me. And the truth is, it wasn't for me, it was for him. He had someplace he wanted to go, something he wanted to do, and I was the means to an end, as I often was. And he would alternate between treating me like a trophy, something he could parade around if I had a success or something, or an accomplishment. It was like his success or accomplishment. And if something went awry, well, that was always all me. He did very, very little. He worked against me, actually, in terms of keeping the house clean and keeping our lives going. And I was doing the majority of the work, like I said, getting no credit for it. And in fact, being told that I never did anything. And he'd get me to a point where I felt like I couldn't do anything successfully. You lose yourself. You lose the ability to be who you are. And as a Christian, and this is one of the points I really want to drive home, I was so quenched. My relationship with God was not as strong as I wanted it or needed it to be, because it couldn't be. Because it's really, really hard to get to that light when you're in such utter darkness. I knew it was there, but I couldn't reach it. I could pray to God, but I couldn't pray to him so openly and feel his presence the way I can as a free person. I couldn't love the way I love now. I was very insecure, very judgmental. He bred that in me over time. He just continually tore down my self-confidence and my self-esteem until I couldn't stand to look at myself anymore. And this is what they do. They just slowly make you into a shadow of yourself. And you find yourself trying to make them look better, make them feel better. It becomes all about them all the time. And you think you're doing it for your kids. Well, that's a nice little lie too, because your kids aren't any better off. My child, and I didn't know this, he was not like physically abused or mentally or emotionally, but there was just no connection. He could never connect with him because this person that was supposed to be his dad wanted to turn him into a miniature version of himself. And so any accomplishment or any experience that my child had, he over-related. But he over-related in such a way that he couldn't possibly see that the outcome could be any different than it had been for him. Well, I went through this in high school, and so you're doing this in high school, and this must be your experience. He couldn't get it into his head that my child could have his own life, his own experiences, and that he wasn't, in fact, him. And if he argued with him, he was just young. He didn't know anything. He was stupid, basically. He invalidated him a lot. And invalidation is a big part of narcissism. And I didn't realize that how damaging that was to my child. I didn't realize they didn't have a real relationship until many years later. And I didn't realize that my whole marriage, what I thought was my marriage, was really just a big sham. It was a joke on me. I knew the fruits weren't there. I mean, I knew on some level, but he talked a good game. And people would look at him and they would think he was a nice person and that we had a strong marriage. Well, you can't come to a person who's stuck in a situation like this and tell them, hey, there's something wrong with him. They're going to balk at that, like I did. I had a friend who told me, she came to me one day and she said, is your husband a Christian? And I looked at her and I thought about it and I said, yeah. And she said, you can't tell. And I was so offended and I just wanted to defend him. And many years later, looking back on that, I kind of laughed because she was so absolutely correct. The fruits weren't there. But I didn't see it at the time. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to hear it. What God did later, when it was getting to be time for me to leave my narcissist, was he brought people into my life who spoke something to me that was not necessarily true. And it gave me freedom because it was what they saw. So I had a very well-meaning friend who came to me one day, looked me in the eye, and she said, I bet he just treats you like a princess. And I don't remember what had happened, but we were in a bad situation at that moment. And I had just gone through something with him where he had deeply hurt me. Oh, it's interesting. I can't remember what because it happens so often. But I remember saying, no, he doesn't. And I remember that moment of clarity, that moment of freedom, of finally giving myself some recognition that, in fact, he wasn't treating me like a princess. He was barely treating me like a human being. And it felt good to say it. There was a second time when I was talking to my aunt on the phone. She called me, and we talked about some financial stuff, how we had bought our house and all of that. And she said how wonderful that was. And she said, well, surely you must trust him. You've been together long enough now that you have a joint account together. And oh my goodness, it just stopped my heart. The idea of sharing our finances. I was like, no. And then I was like, we've been married for like 19 years almost. Shouldn't I trust him enough to have a joint account with him? But I didn't. You can never open up and be intimate with a narcissist because, well, for me, I couldn't. There was always something there that could only come so close. And then this automatic guard went up. It was like a recognition by my spirit of something I wasn't ready to take in all the way. But I couldn't open myself up to him and be everything that I was meant to be. I couldn't love him the way I wanted to. I did try. Oh, I prayed for our marriage and our relationship, and I worked on it, but I was the only one doing it. And it doesn't mean anything. And You could pray for help, you could pray for change, you could try to be the change, you could do all those things that religious people tell you to do. But if you're with a narcissist, unless God gets in there and grabs hold of their heart and changes them from the inside out, it's just never going to happen. And the thing is, they don't see the need. They don't think there's anything wrong with them. So it's really hard. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but in my situation, just like not all people will accept Christ, not every narcissist will ever come to the truth or come to the light. And there comes a point where God may be saying to you, this is not what you're meant for. I'm going to tell you a secret that some people in church won't like. Divorce is not always sinful. It was God that told me to get divorced. It was God that told me to walk away. And I remember that day so well because it came out of nowhere. I was cleaning out my closet, just a little chip away at a big project that was the restoration of my house. And as I was separating our clothes, his clothes in one box and mine in another, God spoke to me very clearly and said, keep doing that. Separate his clothes. You're going to ask him for a divorce. And I still remember my reaction because it seemed so odd and it surprised me so much. But it was like I looked at him and was like, really? I can go? Like the gratitude and the disbelief that I could be free, that I don't have to stay, that I'm not bound by this obligation in this marriage covenant, that God is releasing me from this situation. And all I feel is, oh my God, I can go. There wasn't one moment where I thought about losing a marriage or losing a spouse or losing this love that we had, because we didn't. The truth is, he never, ever loved me. And though I tried, I couldn't love him the way I wanted to. Love is patient, love is kind, doesn't envy, doesn't boast, isn't proud, isn't rude, isn't self-seeking, all of those things that it says in Corinthians. He checked the box in the opposite direction. He was proud and rude and self-seeking and not kind and not patient, and he broke me little by little, but my God lifted me up. And the day that I took that ring off, I had never taken it off in all the years we'd been married. It was like shackles coming off my wrist. And I felt it. I felt the release. And I never put that ring on again. And I was so grateful as I got out of that situation, and it was not easy. A narcissist won't let you go easily. They'll come after you. They'll start with playing really nice. Like, he was going to take me to Hawaii, and we were going to renew our wedding vows. And, oh, my son was going to be the best man. And, oh, he would even go ziplining for me, even though he was afraid of heights. And he was going to get rid of all the distractions that we had in life, like the cards that he was just like totally obsessed with. He was just going to get rid of those. And he was going to be there for me. And he was so sorry he had neglected me. And he was so sorry he had done this. And he was so sorry he had done that. But then it would flip, and it would flip suddenly, and he'd suddenly be like, but you left me without a warning. You left me. You abandoned me. You neglected me. You're far more abusive than I ever was. And that little by little who he was came back in. Now, when I divorced him, I was totally led by the Holy Spirit in those moments. I was kind. And I remember when I first told him, I said something like, I want you to be healthy. I want you to have a really good life. And I meant it. So I need you to take care of yourself. I gave him a gift that would help to that end. And I told him all these nice things that I really believed. And then I said, but I don't want to be married to you anymore. And he grabbed hold of me. And he was in tears. And he was so upset, holding onto my arms, like clinging on to me and saying, no, no. Even a week before, had he done that, I probably would have, that soft part of me would have come in and I would have said, okay, you know what, we'll work on it. Let's stay together. That day, God had flipped my emotions. And I still had the softness, but it was different. And it was me saying to him, instead of, okay, I'll stay with you, we'll work it out. Instead, it was me saying, I'll help you through this. And I meant it. I was prepared to give him everything. And we pretty much did. I gave him the house. I gave him the better of the two cars. I paid all his bills for 3 months as he trying to help him get settled. He fought me every step of the way because he didn't want me to go. It's not because he loved me. It was because he was losing his maid. He was losing his company. He was losing all of the things that he had made me into. And it was going to hurt his reputation. If I left, it was going to make him look bad. And so that was the next thing. After being nice didn't work, then we went after my sanity and my realness and everything that he could think of to slander me, he did. And the flying monkeys, the people that come after you that think they know the narcissist and really don't. Maybe they're friends that person's had for years, but they don't know who that person really is to the core. The only people that know are the people in the trenches and God. My son and I were like war buddies. We were the ones who were there. We know what really happened. And nobody else has any right to judge this situation because they weren't there. They don't know the monster. They only know what they got to see. They only know what you show them. Sometimes when people are on social media and they're taking pictures, look at their eyes sometime. Look at the eyes. What do you see? You can see a spirit in a person's eyes. And even though they can hide a lot of times, photographs aren't so much one of them. So do you see softness and kindness? Do you see Jesus in that person? Or do you not? And that's a decision only you can make. But sometimes when those people are waving at you on social media, they're not waving, they're drowning. And the worst thing you can do is hit like. If you know somebody is suffering from narcissistic abuse, pray for that person and talk to them. I had people come up to me after the fact and say to me, I always kind of knew something was off with him, but you seemed happy. Yeah, didn't I though? But I wasn't. I spent so many nights crying until I had no tears left. So many things, so many dreams I gave up on, so many trips I didn't take, so many things that just didn't happen. And the ones that did were the ones he wanted. And it was always going to be about him. Everything. And I don't mind giving of myself to someone. As a Christian, you look for opportunities to do that. That's what this is. I'm really sharing my story and my experience in hopes that someone will look in that and hear that and say, looking in a mirror, I get that. This kind of like what I'm going through. And say to this person, if that's you, that you don't have to stay. If God is telling you this person doesn't love you, can't, in fact, doesn't have the ability to ever love you, and by the way, won't ever love your children or your grandchildren. And what about your children as they grow? Do you want them to see a healthy, happy you? Do you want them to see a free you, or do you want them to see a person who plays this game with a spouse who devalues them and pushes them around and plays this horrible game with their heart, with their soul, with their emotions, with their friends, with their family, where nothing is ever what it appears to be? Do you want them to believe that love is all about commitment? But commitment to what? Commitment to who? Who are you really committing to? There are people in the church who will tell a woman that she needs to stay married, and that even if her husband goes against what God says, she should listen to her husband because that's ultimately being submissive and being a good wife. Well, I'm calling BS on that one. Because I remember a time when God clearly told me to do one thing, and he clearly told me to do another. And somebody said that to me, and even as stupid as I was, I did this one thing right. Because I looked at that person and I was like, no, I'm going to do what God says. I'm not going to let him drive the family off a cliff out of some kind of misplaced obedience and ignore what God says. I'm going to do what God says and trust him to handle whatever happens with this guy. And it was the right thing. But we tell people things like this in the church, and we tell them, God wants you to be holy, not happy. Well, this is the choice you made. This is the person you picked. God wants you to forgive. Absolutely forgive the person. Don't hold anything against him. I can look anyone in the eyes on this day and time and say, I have nothing against the person I was married to. It isn't about that. It's about the truth being told. It's about the truth helping, because if you know the truth will set you free. And I believe that my truth might be setting someone else free. You don't have to be married to a narcissist. It is okay to leave. It is okay to divorce. It's probably wise if you think through how you expect that person will react and have some ideas in place for where you're going to go, who you're going to stay with, how you're going to do it. I strongly recommend that you sneak out. I would not let the narcissist see you leave. I would say do it in the middle of the night. Do it quickly and quietly. And go to some place where that person will not expect you to be. And find yourself some protections, restraining orders, police, whatever you got to do. Stay under the radar, and as much as you are able, go no contact. Anytime you have a conversation with this person about anything, they will try to get you to say something or do something you shouldn't say or do. They will try to re-engage you in the conversation. They think you're trauma bonded. They don't believe that you will leave. They think that they are much stronger and better, and you can't do any better than them. And guess what? You can. When I was a girl, a young girl, I really believed in that concept of the one. That person out there who wasn't perfect, but was perfect for you, and you were perfect for them, and you would just love each other, and it would be beautiful. And then as I got older and had more and more disappointments in that area and made mistakes, I began to not believe in that anymore. And I decided that, as a Christian, I decided that that love was not real, and that people who thought that were just, they're misplacing the devotion they needed to have for and with Christ. And that the songs and the movies and the books, and it was just all silliness, and it was over the top and sappy, and that kind of love wasn't real. And I didn't know, based on the mistakes I had made, I felt like I was sort of a lesser Christian, and I didn't deserve the same level of person that I had before, maybe. And so in this vulnerable state, where my self-esteem had already taken a pretty deep hit, and I was pretty lonely and vulnerable, he showed up. He targeted me. He saw what he could do. And right away, he brought himself into my world and tried to relate to me. Related to me in ways that I really thought, wow, this person really knows me, really cares, really gets it. And he didn't. It was a game. And he used it against me later. The person that I was, the times when I did try to be open and real, were just fodder for the fight. That's all that he wanted. And if you get nothing else from this video, because I'll probably make more, but I feel like I'm just doing in the moment what God's leading me to do. There's no script. Nothing's rehearsed. Nothing's take two. Just sitting here talking to you in my room and telling you that, like God said to me that day, it's okay to go if you need to go. It's okay to be free. You're quenched. If you want to love people and you want to fulfill your purpose, God's purpose for your life, and you want to be the best person and the best Christian you can be, and you want to have the healthiest relationships you can have, and you want to live longer, and you want to be healthier, you can't stay in that situation. And nobody can force you to leave, and nobody should. But how many choices do you have now? What's happening to you now? And sometimes we think we're doing it for all these really magnanimous reasons, like forgiveness and love and children. But ultimately, my suggestion to you and my prayer for you is that you will put all of that aside and just listen to God. And if he's telling you to stay and work on your marriage, maybe they're not a narcissist. Or maybe it'd be one of those really rare situations where he's going to turn it around. But don't delude yourself into believing that. If that's not the case, get out. By the way, that love I was talking about before does exist. It is a real thing. And it is possible for you to find that. But you're not going to find it staying where you are. So I'm praying for you, whoever you are, wherever you are. I pray that you find freedom and peace and hope and joy and love in your life. Because it's your God-given right. And you've given up enough time. You've given up enough of yourself. Trust God to show you the way. Take it step by step, moment by moment, but don't look back. Don't let the enemy come in and tell you things that aren't true. Don't let people accuse you of listening to Satan if you know you're hearing from the Holy Spirit. Let them say what they want to say. Let them think what they want to think. It doesn't matter. But don't let it get in. Take care.